Dude, do you ever, let me ask you this, okay? And I'm being serious here. Do you ever like wake up in the, like in the middle of the night, you think you hear a sound and then your heart just starts racing like crazy? I mean, like literally, this happened to me last night. I woke up, I heard something, my heart was pounding so hard, I could like feel it in my neck.
Dude.
And then I'm like, huh? Dude. And then the whole time I'm sitting there, not getting interrupted because Tyler isn't there.
I'm chomping at the bit.
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, something woke me up. I'm trying to remember what the sound was. And then I'm like, did somebody bump the door? Was there, I don't know, man. Anyways, that happened to me 2 nights in a row, man.
Well, I got one thing to say and then, so the reason I was like so excited is because this exact same thing happened to me on...
Making it up.
Change it. On Monday, Courtney went to the hospital. Her cousin got in a car accident.
Get like too many details.
Everything's okay. But I put the girls down and I stayed at home with them. Well, it was like, she didn't get into like 1:30 or 2 or something. And it was that same thing. It was like something about like, I guess like where I was like in my dream. And then I hear the, like before the alarm is cut off, you hear it like going like beep, beep.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And like something about like that and the timing of like how I was sleeping or dreaming or whatever, like it immediately like sent my heart into like, so much so that like I had to like sort of chill out for a second. I like got up and I like walked around for a second because like I thought like it immediately went from like 0 to like, it felt like I was going to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
And there was no logic to it. It was like totally out of the blue.
Yeah. And that's the thing that sucks about the alarms is like the beep that alerts you that the door is opened and you have to disarm the alarm and the beep that like, okay, it's time to leave. Please exit now.
Yeah,
that,
right.
You know, that beep is so close. Yeah. In similarity here, in the middle of the night, it's one and the same.
Yeah.
Like, can we just get like maybe, I don't know, like, look, Shaquille O'Neal is doing a lot these days, strange kind of commercial. What if it's Shaq's voice? It's like, uh-oh, somebody's here. I don't know what it would be. But...
hey, it's alarm time.
Yeah,
somebody's breaking in.
Something like that, man.
The other thing I was going to say is there's something that I have pretty consistently, and I looked it up years ago because I didn't know what it was, but it's called like exploding head syndrome. Have you heard about this?
Listener, I wish you could see my face right now.
What?
It's the face of how many strange random ailments does Tyler have and how many times have I had to hear about them?
No,
go ahead.
It's not anything like crazy. It's not.
Well, boy, like what a name for it then, huh?
No, the name is by far like really
worst
intense.
Part, huh?
But basically, it's just this idea that whenever you're going to sleep, and I think it's similar to the way you'll have like those like where your whole body like jerks, and it kind of, like when you you know what I'm talking about, just as you're like falling asleep. It's kind of like that, but it sounds like you hear this like bang, like, and you could swear that you hear it like in your ears.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
So it could be that, yeah.
It's my exploding head.
Yeah.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, a podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. We are your hosts, Woody Brown
and Tyler Bentz.
What's up, brother?
Hey, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, but I think, before we started recording, one of the things that we were talking about kind of were, yard work, okay? And I think that might be a sign. Look, I kind of recently had a birthday. I think this is a sign that you're kind of getting older when the prospect of having to cut the grass becomes like an exciting one.
Dude, I could not agree more. I as you know, I think
it's cathartic, man.
It's super cathartic. It's sort of like you get that like you get that sort of rush of like a job completed.
Yeah, right. It's like instant gratification. It's the same reason why I like washing my Jeep.
Well,
it's
I
like
hate that.
Well, you don't.
I haven't washed my car in literally 15 years.
You don't have a Jeep, so.
I mean, I have a Honda Accord.
Oh, man. So he's a lowrider. He's got the spoilers and everything. Loves Fast and the Furious. Like, we never talk about that on the show. And maybe now's the time. I don't.
I do have
up to you.
I do have a confession to make. I have not seen a.
Don't lie.
Well, no, listen.
Do not lie.
And this is to the chagrin of our buddy Christian. What's up, Christian? He actually says that the Fast and the Furious movies are actually pretty good. But I have a confession. I haven't seen any of them post Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, here's my confession. Christian, I agree with you. They are extremely entertaining. The only one they're just like, especially the first ones, they're just fun to kind of like, they're so over the top and ridiculous. Like, I need NOS and I need it by tonight.
Yeah, right.
It has those like quotable moments that are just hilarious. So,
see, I thought, and I thought that you had that Paul Walker calf tattoo. I thought you just liked him. I didn't know that.
Well, I do love Paul Walker, but I do like Paul Walker, but not as much as Boo Boo's the one that like he just every movie he was in.
Oh, he loved that.
He had to get it. Dude, speaking of movies, man, go ahead, tell me.
Okay, so.
Hold on, I got to bask in a little glory here, folks.
You're getting worse than I am.
No. I have to bask in a little bit of glory here, folks, because time and time again, especially on this show, there are so many things that we talk about where, honestly, full disclosure, it's Tyler that has introduced me to this idea or this theory, this cryptid or a story or whatever. And admittedly, I love that because I love to like learn about new stuff and dive in and then, kind of storytell on our show. Okay. It's very rare where I get the I told you so moments because for the most part, Tyler and I, as far as music and movies and stuff, we end up somehow kind of either already liking the same things separately or kind of finding or discovering this, maybe book, movie, artist, whatever, at the same time or close to it.
Yes.
This is a moment where I have to kind of just like, oh, finally. Because I've been talking about this, what Tyler's going to tell you in just a second. I've been telling him this.
You've been talking about the book, mainly.
I've been talking about everything.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So go ahead and tell him. I just had to kind of bask in some glory here.
Okay. Well, and I'm pretty sure we've done this. I've made a point to say this on the show, but I have, and I mean, I do lose a little credibility with our, sort of nerd community a little bit in this, but I have always kind of looked down on Dune as a whole. I didn't know anything about it to my, I didn't know anything about the book. I didn't know, all I knew of it was like seeing like little bits of like the David Lynch 80s movie, like little bits of that. And like, anytime anybody would sort of explain it, it's like, oh yeah, there's this like spice and like da-da-da. And I'm just like, what the hell? like, no, I'm a Star Wars fan. I can't get into that. But I have to say my recent commission list, which is going very, very slow. So if you've commissioned me, I'm sorry it's taken so long, but I'm going as fast as I can. On the list popped in, Paul Atreides or Muad'Dib or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Paul
Muad'Dib, yeah. And I was like, man, I don't know anything about this. And I'm super OCD. And so, and I've done this with several commissions that come in. If I don't know anything about it, it's like I will pour myself into finding out. Like I want to know the character. I want to figure out like, well, what's gonna make this piece of art as good as it can be, connected to the source material. Which,
real quick, can I just say that is, and I'm sure potentially like other artists do that and stuff, but that is so cool to me because it's like, it's not just you looking at a bunch of, like
reference shots.
other someone's drawings.
Oh, right.
This is you like immersing yourself in that character, learning their backstory and everything that makes that person who he is or she, depending on whatever you're drawing, and then like letting that fill your subconscious as you're drawing. I mean, I just think that's awesome, man. So
yes,
well done.
Thank you. I mean, and again, I credit it to just pure,
like just having me as a friend.
No obsessive compulsion.
Yeah.
But at first, I was like, well, let's see, like put some videos on, like. Maybe I'll get like a vibe of like just watching like the little vignettes of like behind the scenes or the music of Dune with like Hans Zimmer and stuff. And I was like, man, this is kind of cool. And also, to my defense, when it came out, I think I was working on that big project. I couldn't see it. And then finally, when I was like, okay, cool, I can finally see it. That was when HBO took it off.
Yeah. So the whole time when the new movie came out, I was like, dude, you've got to watch this movie. You've got to watch it, dude.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand it's an undertaking. It's a long movie.
Yeah. 2 hours and 35 minutes.
Yeah. And so by the time you finally got around to it, gone.
Yeah, right. And I was kind of bummed, but then I was like, well, who cares, whatever. But then this commission came through, and I was like, well, I'll put it on in the background because the behind the scenes little vignettes, I was like, man, this does look pretty cool. And I mean, I am also like a pretty patient sort of movie watcher. Like I'm cool with like really slow movies or really atmospheric movies. Like I like the like experiential type movies, like Blade 2049. Blade Runner 2049. Not the Wesley Snipes Blade movie, which is Blade 1 and 2 are awesome, so I'm cool with that. So I was like, well, this does kind of feel a little bit like that. So I put it on while I was working and was absolutely blown away. Like the second that it went off, I really felt, well, number one, I was a little bummed because, and also this is going to be spoiler territory if you haven't seen the new Dune. But I was bummed because it was like, oh man, that's just the first half, which I knew going in it was. But I was kind of bummed about that. But then mainly it was like, I don't know, it was like this weird, and I haven't felt this for a movie in a long time, where it felt like I didn't want to like leave that world. You know what I'm saying? Like,
for sure. You want to see more of it. You want to like live in it.
It was almost like a longing, and so immediately I restarted it and watched it again. Dude, in the last 2 weeks, I have watched this movie like 6 times.
Yeah,
and I think it is one of the greatest. And again, I haven't read the book. Forgive me, guys. But I have to say, like, this new movie, I think it is an absolute masterpiece. I think it is, and I mean, I get that you younger kids out there, like with smaller attention spans, I get it. It's like nothing happens, it's boring, da 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 da. But like, man, if you're like cool with sort of just immersing yourself in like a movie and the vibe and just taking it in like at whatever speed it comes at you. Like, I think this movie is an absolute, like, classic.
Yeah. And I feel like for some reason, I swear we kind of talked about this at some point. I don't know. But the one thing that I was worried about whenever I saw it in the theater multiple times was that if you didn't have any sort of, like, knowledge base or foundation for the story, that you would kind of come away being like, wait, what? I don't get it. What just happened, right? And, my wife had not read the books and stuff and didn't really know much about it. She just knew I was obsessed. And
so basically
the cast. Yeah, dude, the cast is just like, that's what got her in the seat, really. And because, it has so many of our favorite actors.
Well, and the second, sorry to interrupt, but and the second half that hasn't come out yet is like a whole other massive list of like crazy cast.
I haven't even looked.
Oh, it's crazy.
Like, let me give a little background. Like, my obsession with this started, I would say I was probably maybe 6 or 7. I don't know. My brother and I remember watched it on VHS for sure, because I think the David Lynch movie came out in like 84. And,
Was it 84 or 86? You may be right with it.
I think it's 84. And actually, let me, I got the VHS right here.
There you go.
This is a sound that you're just not going to get anywhere else, folks. I want you to hear something. That's the sound of a VHS tape coming out of its sleeve, which is just beautiful.
Although, hey, can you, while you're doing this, can you open the plastic shell case also? Give us a little ASMR. Oh, yes.
And that, in case you're wondering, is a copy of The Princess Bride that just happens to be on my desk here. But hold on. Yeah, 1984.
Cool. Okay.
So, clearly I would have been too young to kind of remember, but I think the way my memory goes is we watched the movie with our dad, and I think it was probably like much later, like 86, 87. I was probably, again, 6 or 7. And
still way too young.
Yeah, pretty young, but still like because of our love for things like Star Wars and even like just sci-fi in general, we were like, oh man, let's check this out. And I swear my dad had a copy of the book. For some reason, I just remember we had a copy of the book in our house, and I read it probably around like 9 or 10 or something. I kind of trudged through it.
Probably didn't know what half of it.
I mean, I did. It's actually really well written, man. It's not like, it's just that.
But I mean, that's pretty high science fiction concepts.
Yeah,
you know?
But again, man, I'm telling you, dude, like the way that Herbert, and so the book, for anybody that's interested, is written by Frank Herbert. And I got to say, like, this guy is one of the most incredible sort of world-building minds that I think has ever existed. And it's really, like, as evidenced by, like, at the back of this book is this, like, glossary and index. And, I mean, he describes everything. It's like, it's almost like you would think that it took him, like, 10 years just to create this world, like, catalog it all. There's religious beliefs. There's this whole thing. And then wrote the story, So anyway, the book's incredible. I became obsessed. My dad doesn't remember ever having a copy of it, so I'm not sure if I just misremembered that. But we used to have like an original printing of this freaking book. And so I was obsessed with the David Lynch movie. I know it has its flaws, dude. Trust me. But whenever I saw that this movie was going to be made, I was excited because I knew that there was a lot of things that Lynch couldn't do with the technology that I knew that they would be able to achieve now.
Yeah.
They did such a great job, man.
But also I've heard since, and again, this is coming from like a totally sort of unbiased, unknowing perspective, but from what I hear, the David Lynch movie was like he wasn't even a fan of like the story really. It was like he was just wanting to do like a David Lynch movie, which if you haven't seen a lot of like other David Lynch movies like Blue Velvet or, I mean, really kind of all of them.
I mean, just let me work the list here.
It's bizarre.
We're talking Twin Peaks,
right.
Eraserhead, The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, Lost Highway,
yeah.
Mulholland Drive. Embarrassingly enough, here's another moment where we're just kind of like laying our cards on the table here. Out of that entire list, aside from just a few episodes of Twin Peaks, I've only seen The Elephant Man.
Well, Lost Highway has one of the scariest scenes ever to me in it. And then Blue Velvet is maybe the first time that I can remember like seeing a movie and being like, how did this get made? Like how?
Really?
Like
just like, and it's just terrible or what?
It's just like, it's just like so intense and like over the top. And you just feel so uncomfortable.
Really? Yeah. Reading through that list, truthfully, like it's kind of surprising to me actually that he made this movie, many, many years later, you find out things like it tanked, dude.
Yeah.
It didn't even make back its budget, I don't think. And I think like even, what's his name? Kyle MacLachlan, like thought that his career was over because like he couldn't get work, man, at all. And I mean, I don't really know how successful he's been anyway.
That's true. I mean, he had a good run on Twin Peaks though.
Yeah. So like everything tied with, so like Lynch was the one that gave him another chance. I think he was also in Blue Velvet, I think.
Hold on. I don't think he is. Who's the main guy?
Yeah.
He was in Blue Velvet?
Yeah, he was in Blue Velvet, and he's also in, like you said, Twin Peaks.
I just remember who's the main guy in Blue Velvet? He just passed away, I think.
While you're trying to find that, it's like I kind of feel like I need to go through because like
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper. Okay, did he pass away?
I think he did pass away recently.
Yeah, well, recently.
Oh,
2010.
I mean,
guess that's recent. Man, I mean, that just goes to show, like, honestly, I do think about that as recently.
Yeah, I do.
And it's like,
I feel like it was a
literally been 13 years later almost.
Yeah. Which, by the way, he is a great actor, but man, like, you should try to watch it today. It is
What, Blue Velvet?
Yeah, you definitely should try to watch Lost Highway, which I don't think was like a big.
I mean, is Dennis Hopper a quote great actor though? I mean, I think about Speed, and I think about now he's been in great movies, but is he a great actor?
Well, let me rephrase it. I think he's a great
have
character
you seen
actor.
Super Mario Brothers?
I think he's a great character actor.
Yeah,
he
King Koopa.
He kind of just has that sort of like you immediately know that it's like Dennis Hopper.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But I will say, like, in you saying that, talking about like your dad having it and stuff. So my knowledge being like no knowledge at all with Dune, I just assumed like, okay, I love Star Wars. I don't even like. I can't stand Star Trek. It's stiff. It's boring. It's like
I love it.
Blah blah blah. I mean, now I kind of I can appreciate it a little bit, but I'm still much more of a Star Wars fan than any of them.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like, I knew that I liked Star Wars, and being a kid in the 80s growing up, at least how I grew up, it was like, you kind of had to like pick one. It's like you couldn't, and Dune was like kind of one of those sort of adjacent films that I just assumed like, man, this is stupid. It's just, all it is like.
It's just trying to be Star Wars.
Yeah, it's just, exactly. It's just ripping off Star Wars, but it looks silly. It looks stupid. Then I found out that, and I never knew this until like as an adult, that the book was written in 1965.
Yeah, dude.
I mean,
like I haven't looked too far into it, but if Lucas hasn't listed it as something that just inspired him in some way, I mean, come on,
gotta be. But yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, I think it's amazing, and I think Denis Villeneuve, the director, is he's just.
There's
he's
a lot
amazing.
of things that I think this one did that the other one couldn't. Mainly, one of them really is visually, dude. Like everything seems so huge.
Oh,
right? And
yeah.
those, like we've talked about this too on the show before. But I'm such a massive fan of such a humongous, like sort of wide shot.
Yeah, so very IMAX experience.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I like the soundtrack, the score.
Oh man, I mean Hans Zimmer is already.
Yeah, dude, he's
dude,
amazing.
This movie is. Now, have you watched? I don't mean to cut you off, but have you watched any of like sort of the making of the music of Dune or anything?
No,
dude. I got to find the link because I ran across one that had like, I guess somebody ripped it from. I don't even know if I should be saying this, but somebody ripped it. I guess from like maybe the DVD,
the DVDs or something,
and it's all like on YouTube. So it's like because you can find a lot of like the little vignettes. So it's like 8 minutes, 12 minutes, But there's one, I'll try to find it. I'll send it to you that has all of them. But dude, it's so amazing. I mean, I'm always a big fan of Hans Zimmer. He's incredible. I love watching his like behind the scenes, like how he like creates these soundtracks, like Interstellar and like the Batman, or not the Batman, but Batman, or Dark Knight Rises and the Dark Knight trilogy. It's so cool, and it's so sort of abstract. It's like he's instead of just being this sort of like, European themed like giant symphony, and like which was like all you had like in the, up until sort of, I mean, fairly recently, really in the last like 20, 30 years, where these like sound designers and like, composers and, people that are scoring these movies are like really starting to think like in different ways of like creating these sounds. I mean, I remember one of the Dark Knight movies, I guess the big one, with Heath Ledger and the Joker and everything. I remember he had like this violinist who it was like he was just this super slow, like, so the entire theme when you see the Joker is like this, like, I mean, it's technically called like sort of a chromatic walk down on a stringed instrument where you're not playing within a scale or anything. It's just like you're just like going da 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 da. And so since the violin is fretless, it's just this constant like it's this super slow burn. Like it builds this weird intensity. And so for this, it was amazing to see that a lot of the sounds are very like all these sort of voices, like a lot of sort of Middle Eastern like chants and stuff, and like a lot of layering and then like reversing and like all these weird like whisper stuff. And I hate that I didn't see it in IMAX. I'm so pissed.
Oh, dude.
Because like I come to find out that like on this movie in particular, so when we stream something, like when we watch it on HBO Max, like on like, my iMac, you're only hearing like the stereo feed, right? But the movie was actually created, and the only way you can experience this is through like seeing a film in IMAX. But like there's 12 separate channels it's not just like left and right, or mono. It's like 12 separate like sort of sound fields where there's all this stuff sort of hiding in those pockets, which is amazing. But it's like the scene that you hear where the guy, like the bagpipes kind of come out. It's not even bagpipes. It's this weird like tenor sax thing. But then there's like they just made all these new instruments because he was like, I don't want anything to feel like anything terrestrial, like anything earth that you've heard before. So we just need to create instruments.
Dude.
Which is amazing.
I do remember. That's incredible, man. And it just goes to like show what an innovative musician and composer this guy is. I mean, I do remember seeing a video about...
After these messages, we'll be right back.
This is Amy Poehler. My new movie, Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, is coming to theaters June 14th, and it's making me feel joy and sadness and anger, definitely some disgust, and I think a little fear. But I'm also feeling these new emotions like anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and ennui.
It's what you call the boredom.
Okay, that one was weird. It's going to be the feel everything movie of the summer. Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Only in theaters June 14th. Get tickets now.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures.
From another dimension, another world, I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
Hey, this is Bryce Johnson from the Bigfoot Collectors Club, and you're listening to Tyler and Woody on That Would Be Rad, because that is rad.
There's like a technique that he uses that I think you were kind of talking about with the Joker, where he uses that chromatic scale that like it tricks your brain into thinking that it's continuously rising. Well, it's like looping kind of on itself.
Yeah, right.
Well, it loops on itself, and I forget what they called it. But when they show it to you, you're like, oh. So when you're like, if you're watching Dunkirk or Interstellar or any dang Christopher Nolan movie, he uses Hans Zimmer all the time. You feel this like, it's like this
Inception.
weird sensation. Yeah, dude, that like, it's just like, it just always sounds like it's there because the way he puts the next one that's doing it is kind of in the middle of, or just behind the middle of that other rise. And so it's just like this continuous rising feeling. And like the way that he's able to kind of really affect emotion through that, the dude, it's just brilliant, man.
Yeah.
And on top of it all now, he's inventing instruments. I mean, it reminds me of, have you seen the behind the making of the music for Mandalorian?
No.
Oh, dude.
Oh, I'll have to check it out.
You have to, man. It's this young kid who
is this the kid that's like, he's sort of like the protege of John Williams?
I don't think I'm sure would love to have maybe hung out with him, but no, this is just like literally, I think he's just like a random kid that they just heard about, invited in, and Favreau was like, hey, I've got this like idea, but I want something that's just not, a bed of strings, and it's got to be something that's unique and instantly sort of recognizable in contrast to John Williams, for example, because, you're diving into this world, this Star Wars world where people expect the Star Wars music, right? And so it's got to be that good, but it's got to be different and unique.
Right. Yeah.
Dude, this kid in this behind-the-scenes thing, you basically tour his little mini studio in his house kind of thing. And he's just like, yeah, so I picked up, he just orders constantly. He's on eBay or just like looking around for just unique, weird
stuff.
Strange instruments. He just orders them all and just like experiments, dude. And he'll just like, he's kind of like, if you mix, I don't know if you've ever seen, you, Tyler, or anyone listening, any of the sort of behind the scenes stuff for like Radiohead. And
Johnny Green.
Sound experiment. Yeah, dude. Well, this kid, he shows this like this giant sort of like, I don't even remember what it is, like a flute sort of thing. And he's like, yeah, I got this. And he just like plays these weird notes. And then he just goes, boom, 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 boom. And he's like, yeah. And that's how that was born. And it's like,
that's so
what?
Cool.
And he's like, sort of just kind of like,
but you know that
super
feeling.
like foreign / California at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like he's just kind of like, and that's how it came about.
He has to be like Swedish or Scandinavian.
Something like that, yeah.
Those guys are just, I'm so glad that you said Radiohead because to me, I always sort of think of Hans Zimmer in that same way, which is cool because he's a a composer, obviously, but he's also kind of like a band guy in the sense of he'll like tour on these like soundtracks and he always like uses like the same like bands and stuff. Like I remember watching this thing with Dune and like he ended up calling, I guess like his maybe like music director or whatever and was like, hey, we're getting the band back together. Do you want to make Dune? And like, it's like so he pulls the whole group back together, and like, I think that's really cool. But I'm glad you said Radiohead because there's sort of this urban legend. I don't know if you've heard about this where, and I can't remember what like sort of solo section it was. I don't think it was in like the Benz era or when they were more of sort of a conventional sort of rock band. I think it was closer to like OK Computer maybe. And they say that like, or the myth, however, is, maybe it's not true, but I like it, is that they're like, okay, we got to figure out a solo. And he literally, grabs like a jug of water, or whatever, like little things, goes up into this like attic space and locks himself there for 2 days. Nobody saw him for 2 days. I think it's even said that like nobody knows like where he even would use the bathroom, which is interesting. But he comes down 2 days later, walks into like sort of the control room or the, and plays like the first take. And it's like the most amazing thing ever. Dude. Yeah. Yeah.
I know Radiohead gets a lot of beef from folks. I think
they're great.
One of our listeners, Julie, gave us grief on Instagram once for using a Radiohead song, I think. But
I don't think Julie likes any of our songs that we like.
If you're listening, Julie, how dare you?
How dare you?
But like, and I get it. Like, it is kind of like classified as sort of quote unquote nerd rock or math rock or whatever. I don't know, man. I love them. I mean, I feel like they invented so many bands. You go back and you listen to early Radiohead, like in Pablo Honey, and it's like, oh, they invented Coldplay. And then you go and you listen to like the Bends, and you're like, oh, they invented Muse. I mean, that's where those bands, all those guys that use that falsetto and like, oh god, dude, it's just so good, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I think like and I can't think of the phrase, but it's something like the point of entrance maybe is like can be kind of like daunting with them because like there are so many sort of abstract components of their music that it's like what am I listening to? Like what is this?
True.
But I think that like I think you almost have to know and have to hear like their earlier stuff to realize that like, oh no, these guys are like so incredible that like they're like beyond like the conventional side. So it's kind of like Picasso, for example. Like not a lot of people know this, but his early work, he was as good as like the Renaissance masters.
Right.
And it was like, okay,
it bored him, dude.
Yeah, it's like I've like completely completed this task. So now like his whole point was to basically to go back to the wonder and the naive sort of view of like how a kid would create art. And so that's, then you see like the cubism and his like geometric motifs and stuff. But it's kind of the same thing like that with Radiohead, where, you listen to, like you said, Pablo Honey and the Bends. Man, there is some of the most amazing, like melodic moments.
And just like rock, dude.
Yeah, and rock. Yeah. Creep and stuff.
Dude, with Creep specifically, I always remember, and I don't remember what year it was, but I remember they played like, which is just so funny to me thinking about this. They played like MTV Spring Break. and they played Creep because like at the time it was like the height of like, the height and almost, it's kind of like, whenever you look at sort of like, let's say a timeline of musical history, there's that overlap period that kind of in between the different sections. So if you've got like hair metal and all that, the overlap period is when like the hair metal ballads were happening as grunge was starting to take over. And then on the
because
flip
it's
side
not
of that,
just a quick shift, it's sort of a
there's like that overlap in years, and that's kind of like what happened and I guess it might have been like 94-ish, it's like where everything, and it sucks for the band, but like bands like Nirvana, by the time that Nevermind comes out, it's so good that it attracts mainstream fans. The band, goes wild in terms of popularity and stuff. And then it's sort of, everything else sort of either tries to copy it or just it's a watered down version of it. And then because of, record execs trying to be like, well, we need to cash in on this cash cow.
We need a grunge band.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyhow, this was kind of in that time period, and what's his name, Tom York had like bleach blonde hair. And, it was like short, and like he's just playing. And literally, dude, they're playing Creep at MTV Spring Break, and it's like people are like jumping in the pool, and you can just tell, dude. I swear, now I've never heard this on an interview, I've never read it anywhere, but I swear that was the moment. And then he's like, "We got to do something else."
Oh, that's a good point.
We got to like innovate because this is not what I want to do.
He's like, I hate this.
Because it was like, after that, man, they really started to push the envelope, even in the Bends. Or wait, is that the one that came?
I think Pablo Honey
before or
came
after?
first.
I think so too. But it's like from there, there was more gradual, like less sort of easily accessible to like the casual listener.
Yeah, or even just like a conventional 3-4 piece rock band, like guitars, drums, bass.
And I get it because it was a hard time to kind of like come out with like a fake plastic watering can. Right. And it's like other people are just like, jamming out. And it's like, I get it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I understand folks, Julie, who aren't super into Radiohead. And like you said, there's so much. But like, dude, oh man, I don't know. So good.
Yeah, they're so good. But anyway, back to Dune. Absolutely genius movie. I think that Timothy Chalamet, is that how you say it? Or Chalamet, but I think it's Chalamet.
Yeah.
And it actually has like the Timothy, 2 E's with a little dash. So is it like...
I forget. I want to say that no, it's Timothy, but I want to say that he does have... It's like his... Like I don't remember where his parents are from. Yeah. I believe so.
I mean, he looks French. He is amazing in this movie,
dude. He's amazing in every movie, man. Well, he's gonna go down in history as one of the best actors of all time,
I agree. Yeah, I've always kind of like, I thought he was cool, but like, he's so like big with like teenage girls, and it's like I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
He's a great looking dude, but I think sometimes like when I hear that before I've seen like the actual sort of acting or the work, it's harder to kind of get into him. But man, after this movie, I was so sold. Like just the scene alone where he's with like the Reverend Mother for the Bene Jesuits. Is that how you say it?
Bene Gesserit.
That's right. Okay, cool.
And I forget, what is the test called? See, this is the thing, man. It's just such an immersive world that when he's put to the test. And like, I don't know how deep you want me to go with like the lore behind it all, dude, but it's just incredible, dude. There's this like, so the Bene Gesserits are, and again, maybe I am pronouncing it incorrectly.
Well, let's kind of. Do you want to start from like?
Well, I don't want to go too far because you only have knowledge of like the first half.
Yes, so please.
And I was going to say, in relation to the David Lynch movie, I think that's part of the reason why he had a tough time, dude, is he slammed it all into one movie.
Right.
And he left out a fair amount here and there. So
Yeah.
he also approached certain things differently as well. Like in the David Lynch version, you get to hear the thoughts of Paul Atreides and, you know, sometimes his mother, and, you know, you hear their narration that it's kind of like that in the book.
But would that not be confusing a little, though? Because, like...
No, because, like, he would be like, I don't know what I'm, you know, like, oh, man. Well, boy, that would be a terrible line. Oh, man.
Oh, man.
No, it wouldn't be confusing. It's just, I don't know.
I'm just thinking compared to, like, the new one, how there's, like, a little bit of that, like, telepathic, or, like, the...
Well, that still occurs, but I don't know. That was just the direction that he decided to go, and, you know, the other guy didn't. But
real quick, let me make a disclaimer also. Like we say with everything, there are many, many podcast episodes out there that are going to do a very deep dive into this, and, like, it's going to be, like, scene by scene and break it down, and we're not doing that at all. This is just sort of, we just kind of wanted to talk about it because I was blown away by the movie, and so... You know, I wanted to talk to my best friend who has been into this source material for years and years. So yeah, so it's gonna be sort of all over the place, but that's what the show is.
Yeah, and 2 points of synchronicity here. Like one of our best friends, Clay, he recently sent me a little birthday surprise.
Me too.
In the mail, and one of them was Dune, House Atreides, which is actually written by, and if you guys don't know this, Frank Herbert's son. Kind of continued some of the writing after his dad passed away. And if you buy the sort of latest printing of the book, there's some really cool, you know, writing from the son Brian Herbert about his dad and growing up with this lore and this world in his house. I mean, the dad was just kind of like entrenched in it. And you read the book and you can tell, like, you feel like
even seeing
Frank
the movie,
Herbert lived in this world.
Right.
And was just kind of telling the story about it.
Yeah.
And also, did we even talk about the fact that Sean Young is in the first movie? And so hot in this movie, dude. With the, oh, come on, man.
Yeah, dude.
Okay. I don't know how deep you want me to get, but let me just tell you some cool moments so that maybe it'll have more impact on the moments that you already thought were cool. Number one, the Bene Gesserit are like this, like, organization that have these, like, telepathic abilities. Are very powerful, but they've been around for, like, just imagine an organization that's been around for thousands of years that kind of controls, in a way, what happens with the galaxy.
They're basically,
what I mean,
like, mutant witches.
Yeah. Well, they're like, they, and again, this is where part of my knowledge, and I'm sure Clay knows all this, is kind of limited, is that, like, I don't know for how long they've been doing this, but whenever these abilities, which typically appear in females, occur, they kind of breed to, oh man, it's so complicated, but they've essentially, world to world, they're trying to create a male version of this so that male can then rule, have those powers, and be like a very, very powerful person. And for centuries, they've been sort of planting this savior theme in all these planetary systems so that when it does happen, they can just kind of, like, have a bigger influence on whoever inhabits that planet, okay? And that's the, I forget the Kassak Satarak or whatever it is, I don't know. Can't even remember Star Wars planets, and here I am trying to remember these names. Essentially, like, the fact that Paul, like, his mom, Jessica, is a powerful...
Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She sure is. I don't mean that in a attractive way, which is also true. But she, like, again, man, I'm going to go back to it. Every single person in every role was just outstanding.
Yeah. Oscar Isaac is incredible.
Oh, dude. So good, man.
Skarsgård is... so good. Josh Brolin. Yeah.
Oh, dude. What about that line where he's like, smile, girl, and he's like, I am smiling.
Yeah.
He plays that sort of, like, gruff, battle sort of experienced general so well, dude.
Yeah.
As far as the lore goes, man, well, I don't even want to dive into that, man, because it just will take a long time to kind of explain on the Bene Gesserit side, but I loved when that scene, just like you said, with when he's going to be tested. And there's a line that the lady says, the sort of the high priestess, if you will, the one that's kind of in charge of all the Bene Gesserits.
The Reverend Mother.
Yeah, the Reverend Mother.
Yeah.
There's this line where she says that and he's like, what's in the box? And she's like, fear or something like that.
Yeah.
Or pain.
And it's some sort of like animal or like...
Well, she's just saying that the reason why, and this is, again, this isn't like a new concept. This is in the book. So it's not them being woke or whatever. The reason why typically females have this power and able to harness it more effectively, and they can harness that power without letting their sort of animal instincts kick in and cause them to just kind of go off the rails.
I like that. Yeah.
And so she's got that just needle next to his neck so that if he starts going nuts, she's just going to kill him. And so that's why Jessica is so sort of distraught outside of the door, because she had been training him of the ways to use the voice.
Which by the way...
Oh, my...
So, dude, by the way, well, let me just say before you get into it. So I don't know anything about it, but in watching the making of and stuff, especially with the sound design, Hans Zimmer, well, I think it was actually sort of Denis Villeneuve's idea, where he wanted, which by the way, the director Denis and Hans Zimmer they were both massive, massive, massive fans of Frank Herbert, Dune, the book and the 80s movie. So I think it's really cool to see that they've made such a loving sort of recreation of it. But his idea was that and I'm sure it's tied to this in the book, in the source material, but that whenever you're using the voice, he was I really wanted to push all these sort of female voices to almost sound like when you're speaking, it's not you, it's your ancestors speaking through you. And that is amazing and sort of esoteric. And
it's wow, that's really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah, see, I do need to watch these behind the scenes
they're
things,
amazing,
because that makes it even cooler, because then it's you're channeling that energy.
Exactly.
And that's what forces you to do what they say.
And God bless, dude, and again, spoiler alert, but when they're in the ship and he's still sort of new at this, so he uses the voice, it doesn't work.
Oh God, dude, this is one of my favorite scenes.
Oh, dude, it's probably my favorite scene. The guard punches him in the face. Him and his mom, Timothée Chalamet's character, Paul Atreides, and Lady Jessica, that's his mom. They're in the ship. They've been kidnapped. They're tied up. Their mouth is covered, or her mouth is covered, I guess.
Her mouth is, because they know she has the voice. She can use the voice.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
Because it's always a female thing, and so they don't even think to tie him up. Well, he tries to do it, doesn't work. He gets, punched in the face.
Yeah, he's untie my mother, and then he's just the guy walks over and you're oh man, it worked. And then he just slaps him across the face.
Which was great. And then...
How does she tell him, though?
Huh?
The mechanics of how she instructs him to do it differently.
Oh, dude, this is another one of my favorite things. These weird, little hand signal.
Yes.
Is that called something in the book?
It's just the secret hand signs. And by the way, it's specific to House Atreides. So those suckers wouldn't be able to know what they were saying. So imagine a sign language based on your own, thousands of years of family tradition and language that is only owned to. It's it's a secret sign language that's only known to the royals of that family.
The scene,
and their subjects, but
the scene where, and we'll come back to the ship scene, but the scene where, she's talking to, I guess, the lady that would become her sort of housemaid, or and she gives the Chris sword to her, the Chris knife, sorry, and she does these little, as she's speaking to this lady, she's I can tell that you have a weapon on your person, and then you can see her doing these hand signs beside her arms are kind of, I guess, sort of behind her back, or to her side, and she's letting the guard know behind her what does she say? She says, be prepared for violence.
For violence, yeah.
Yeah, dude. That's so cool.
So cool, dude. And man, I loved it so much that I incorporated it into our Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Yes, you did.
So Tyler's character and our buddy Dan's character, they can speak to each other using their own secret thieves can't. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's supposed to be like symbols that you write down that, you know. But instead, I think that's cool. But I just seen the movie and I was like, we're going to do it differently, guys. What do you think about this? And they're like, yes.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. It's so cool.
But yeah, so they're on the ship. The mom's mouth is still bound. Paul Atreides attempts to use the voice. She signs to him something like, you have to find the right tone or whatever.
Yeah, the right pitch or the right tone.
Yeah,
or
something like that. Yeah, and then he does it right. And it's just, dude.
And it's so creepy. Like, however, like they, like within the sound design of that, it's like.
There's like a guttural sort of growling sort of sound.
But then there's also a little bit of like Starscream also from Transformers.
Yeah.
Where it's like, like sort of high pitched and mechanical almost. Yeah, dude, it's so good. So yeah, so then the guy comes over and, takes the gag out of her mouth and then she just like goes off on everyone, which is amazing.
So cool, dude.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know, just like every scene. Well, let me say this, and this is sort of to play off of what you were saying originally about how you kind of had to worry with like, well, if like people don't know the book or they don't know anything about it, like how is this going to work? Like, because there's so much to kind of get.
Like when the credits roll, are they just like, what?
Right.
This is where it ends? What the heck's going on?
Yeah. But I gotta say, I mean, even just with like the first watch, and I do have to admit that like most of anything that I watch, I'm working, so I'm like drawing or inking or whatever. So I'm kind of more like hearing it, but I wasn't really confused at all. I mean, there were certain little things that was sort of like, and again, spoiler alert, but there are some things that I don't totally understand, but I'm guessing is explained in like the second half. Like I don't really understand.
We will return after these messages.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show.
So you see several times throughout the movie where Paul, like the main character, he sort of has like these visions and he's like, seeing like, from what you would gather, he's seeing the future. But then I guess as you go along, you're seeing that like, I guess maybe it's not always exact. So maybe he's seeing like a possible future.
Do you want me to tell you?
I mean, is it going to give away anything?
No.
Okay.
So the way the prophecy goes is that like the person who is the, savior has the ability to basically mentally be, and that's what the spice does to him. So when he's having those weird reactions, he's channeling this ability and energy without knowing how, essentially. Okay,
it's basically like taking ayahuasca,
but it gives them the ability to be in all places and all times at the same.
Whoa!
So like,
yeah, because it says something about like something about space and time, like.
So he can see like different outcomes and potential outcomes. Yeah, because there's one part, and I don't remember this in the book, but there's this one part where he sees this guy giving him advice on the desert and stuff, and then that ends up being the guy that he fights and kills. It's the same dude. So like,
interesting.
You got to wonder on that. I thought they did, like I said, man, visually it's awesome.
Oh man, it's so good.
One of the things that kind of stunk about the first movie, and it's been a while since I've watched it, I'll probably now go back and rewatch it, but one of the things that my brother and I were just so obsessed with was like the 90s computer game that came out, and I think it was called, and don't quote me on this because I'm not going to look it up, but I think it was called like Dune 2 or something. And essentially, it was like, it wasn't really RPG, man. It was kind of like, I don't know what the I guess category of video game that this is, but it's kind of like, imagine like Sim City, but
like
Dune.
Like strategy, sort of.
Well, yeah, kind of strategy, I guess. But like, so what you would do is you would pick what house you wanted to be. I always chose Atreides, and then you would get like, you have to start building your main base, and then harvesting spice, and then these things are getting attacked. Well, now I got to send soldiers, and the Harkonnens and see, here's another thing. This is what I was going to say earlier. In the movie, this version, they pronounce it Harkonnen. Mm-hmm. I, as anybody listening, am not a linguist, and I frequently mispronounce things, but my entire life since I was 6 or 7 pronounced them Harkonnen. So I don't know which way is correct, but I'm sticking to Harkonnen because that's just what I call them. Okay.
I like it, yeah.
I think the things about this story that were intriguing to me now as like an adult is like, it's got aspects of everything that you would want. There's some like political intrigue. The fact that his family was being sent there. Yeah, but in this awesome,
I like
though,
it, yeah.
Because it's like his family's being sent there because the Harkonnens essentially weren't doing a great job. The Harkonnens are mad about this. They think it's an insult. They know that the Duke, so like Duke Atreides, who is Oscar Isaac, in the like sort of galaxy or universe or whatever,
Duke
is
Leto?
Leto.
Yeah.
He's extremely respected. And you can kind of tell the type of leader he is
he's so
when he
great.
first meets with the first Fremen. And he's just like, as long as I'm here, we're not going to be, Now, there is an aspect to him that he also knows that by winning these people's approval, he's going to have access to millions of potential warriors.
And he keeps
knows
saying
that.
like ground and air, but we need desert power.
Yeah.
And that's explain the Fremen.
Yeah,
briefly.
So basically, these are the folks that are native to this planet. Over centuries, they've adapted to the harsh climate. There's zero rain. It's an entire desert planet, right? So much so that they've created these suits that capture your body's moisture and recycle it so that when you're out in the desert, you can survive basically and keep using that moisture. So when you sweat, all that stuff, it recycles it and filters it so that you can drink it again or whatever.
And I think they're called still suits.
Still suits, correct, yeah.
Which they look amazing, by the way.
Dude, even the old school designs are pretty cool, but these are just over the top awesome.
Yeah, I will say I did try to incorporate, like in the piece of art that I was talking about. From what I know, and again, I don't know the end, but there's Paul Atreides, and he's holding the little Muad'Dib, the little rat,
desert mouse
thing, and then his other hand is sort of doing like the 2 fingers up, sort of like saint pose, and then around his head, and we'll post it whenever I finish, but around his head is sort of like energy, but if you look at it sort of abstractly, the energy is sort of in the same shape as like sort of the spikes of the sandworm.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so
and also like the old school like saint.
Yeah, well that's
paintings.
The whole motif is like the saint motif.
It's really cool.
So yeah.
Can I talk a little bit about Muad'Dib and why it's an important piece to the fact that that's what he chose his Fremen name to be?
Well, does it have something to do with the little scene where like you see it sweat and then it it drifts down his ear and then he like gathers it and drinks it?
Kind of, yeah. So Muad'Dib is this adapted kangaroo mouse of Arrakis, which, by the way, Arrakis, we're throwing a lot of names at you.
Yeah.
Arrakis is the desert planet that we're kind of on in this story. And it's associated in the Fremen earth spirit mythology with, they're just admired by the Fremen for its ability to survive on its own in the open desert. And so the fact that like he chooses that because he sees it, but it's that synchronicity thing, man. Every choice that he makes and the things that he does further solidify his place with the Fremen. I don't know if you remember this line, but when the leader of that tribe that he ends up kind of being confronted by when he's in the desert with his mom after essentially that ship crashing when they have that confrontation with those two Harkonnens. That desert leader, when he's meeting with Leto, looks at Paul and says, in Fremen language, I know you.
Yeah. There's several of those times. Like he says that, and then I love the scene where they're first introducing the steel suits, and the lady, sort of the ecology director or whatever, is going around like making sure they have the suits on right, and she's like, have you worn one of these before? And he's like, no, first time. And she's like, well, but you're wearing slip style, your boots, you're wearing slip style. Who taught you that? And he's like, nobody. It just seemed like the right way. And then she says under her breath in the Fremen language, she says something like, he will know our ways as his own.
Yeah.
Or something.
The prophecy, dude.
Which is so cool, man.
Oh my gosh, dude. And I feel like as we're like talking about this, I feel like our listeners are probably just like, we get it, guys. You guys lie. You guys love every movie. Every movie is 10
really
out of 10.
Do this, yeah.
But the problem is there's a lot of movies that I've seen recently that I actually didn't like.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to dive into those, but this is one of those movies that I can understand that people may not have just like, I don't really get it.
Yeah, me too.
And it just seems kind of like, especially if you don't have that sort of reference material in your bank of knowledge, it can seem.
But I didn't have any of that.
Hey, like, this is. I mean, it was kind of like a cooler Star Wars. It kind of is. I mean,
and I will say I never understood the spice thing. But before watching this, so I always thought that was cheesy. I always thought it was like some sort of like oh, they're like harvesting this spice, and like there's like that's what the whole thing is based on, is like sort of like economies being built on this like certain spice, and like trade routes, and like to me it was just super boring, and it sort of felt like it's a whole movie about all the stuff that I don't like about Star Wars, all the political bureaucratic kind of stuff. But it's not. It's totally different. It's like this, like what he said, it's like this like psychedelic sort of hallucinogenic sort of byproduct of the sandworm's like waste. And it's like, it's like under the sand, obviously because these massive sandworms, they live in the sand, and like it's really cool. And then it causes like, obviously with Paul, he's like him and his mom, Lady Jessica, both, they had that Bene Gesserit thing going on, and so it's like being around that spice like sort of activates it. It's like an ayahuasca ceremony, like a peyote experience, like shamanic sort of experience. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and to give a little bit more gravity to it, like melange, which is the true name for the spice, is mildly addictive taken in small quantities, severely addictive when imbibed in quantities above 2 grams daily per serving. And, of course, Paul Muad'Dib claimed that was really kind of a key to his powers, really. And something else that's kind of important that I don't know, and I can't remember off the top of my head if they got to it in this movie.
Oh, I can tell.
They certainly do in the David Lynch version, but where they talk about how, well, again, it gets kind of like in depth here, but like there's a guild that, so for traveling these sort of extreme distances, in Star Wars, they just kind of like tap in coordinates and go, right?
Yeah.
Well, here, to be able to travel like that and fast, you have to have somebody that is what they call a guild navigator. And the navigators use the spice basically constantly just to make sure that they're seeing like the end result, essentially.
But it turns them into those like big worm like,
things,
weird creatures.
Yeah, then they didn't show that in this one.
No. I only know that because I saw actually, let me get into this real quick. I saw this, which our buddy Dan told me that, I guess it's called Corridor Crew, and it's like these like VFX artists.
Oh, yeah.
And they watch all these movies and kind of break them apart of like, oh, well, this is really interesting how they did this, or that's actually easy, that's not good effects, blah, blah, blah. And they sort of critique kind of like what we're doing now, but from a visual effects standpoint. And one thing that like it was just rave reviews for the new movie, first of all. But there was this one shot, and like we got to try to find the link to this like specific video, and like I'll even try to find like the minute marker. But it's this shot where they pause like the old movie, like the David Lynch film, and there's like this one shot where you see this massive ship, the House Atreides like massive ship, and you see these a ton of people like out in front. It's like this epic shot. There's these multiple ships in the background that are huge. And what's weird is like they paused it and they were like, one of the guys was like, okay, I want you to tell me how you think they did that. And, his first response was like, what I'm guessing like most of it is all like matte painting, which is what I thought it was, which in old visual effects, it was just like a painted background. And there were some amazing artists back in the day. I mean, there's so much of like Star Wars even, and that's just totally like a painted background, but it's done so well that you would never know. But anyway, he's like, nope. Turns out, so, and it's hard to sort of explain this visually, but you have a massive ship, and you have these sort of like blocks of like maybe 100 people. So it'd be like a block of 100, go over a little bit, another block, and then so they're all in like little square like groups of like all your hundreds and thousands of people. And the guy's like, well, yeah, how are like, these are real people. Like, how are they doing that? And then, their flags waving and stuff. And it's like, so this is the most amazing thing. The other guy's like, well, I did a little research, and basically what they did is they created these like 15-foot miniature models of all this stuff, right? And, perfectly done, all these like ships. And then they also use sort of like forced perspective to make the ships in the background sort of like be like much smaller, and like they did all these like tricks. But this is the most amazing thing. They basically went to like a stadium where like the Rose Bowl takes place. Okay. They build these like 100-foot scaffolding, like this giant scaffolding, and then they set up all of the 15-foot like miniatures of these massive looking ships. And here's the amazing part. In order to get the actual real people, is they basically like cut a hole in the scaffolding. So you see all these ships, and then they had, several hundred extras down like on the field. So like you're literally looking through the little hole of the miniature, and you're seeing these people that are 200, 300 feet away, but they appear like they're real people standing in front of this massive ship.
That's incredible.
I mean, that is like, and I don't know if that
DP doesn't get, DP meaning director of photography, doesn't get just continually hired over and over and over again. I mean, that's like old school perspective camera tricks like that, dude. Amazing. Blow me away, man.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's so much like, obviously now stuff is so much more realistic and like with CGI and stuff, but like, man, just those guys that were able to like think out of the box to get these like particular shots and stuff. I mean, that is like that. Like when I heard that, I was so blown away by that. Like I even told you that was like the first thing I went into when I got to your house the other night. But yeah, I do love like in the new film, I love the giant ships. One of the things that I really love is the Bene Gesserit ship and the mothers, or I mean they're kind of like witches in a way. They have these like sort of tall, sort of square baskets on their head and all these robes, and there's a lot of like flowing sort of robes, very sort of Middle Eastern-y.
And like also Catholic.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Sort of like a blend of if nuns also had magic, like not magical powers, but like abilities.
Yeah, and then they also lived in the Middle East. But there's like one scene, and it was such an interesting like choice to do this visually. I mean, everything visually in this movie is so stunning. But like this like far away shot where you see the ship like rising into the air, and like the ramp is like lifting up, and you see these women in like these flowing robes, and like you said, very sort of like religious iconography kind of stuff. And you see them like walking up this ramp. It's like all black. It's very like dark looking. But then there's inside the ship, you see nothing but like the most bright fluorescent white light. So it creates this like contrast. It's just a weird choice, but I was like, man, that's so sort of striking, visually. But I loved it. I think the costuming was amazing.
One thing I wanted to make sure that you knew, and anybody that's maybe seen the movie, or if you go and watch it and you're like, they're able to like traverse long distances in space, basically, and then like you look at their ships and it's like nobody's walking around with like a cell phone. There's all this like high tech stuff, but it's not really high tech.
Yes.
Can I speak to that? Do you know the reason why?
Well, and I only know this just from like the making, but I guess, I mean, it's originally in like the original one, I think. But I know that Denis Villeneuve, the director, really pushed for this sort of like imagine like we had all that stuff, and then so far into the future, like we no longer have like.
No, it's purpose. There's a purpose behind it.
Oh, okay, go.
Yeah, so basically, society in general, and again, Arrakis, the desert planet, is only one of them. So all the other planets aren't desert or anything, but society in general, across the universe or galaxy or whatever, got to a point to where technology was such a commanding force in their lives that they like banned it.
I mean, that's genius.
Yeah, dude, right? And to like a certain point, it's the same reason why like when he's sort of watching I think they show it in this movie, like the quote unquote, he calls them, I think in the book, picture books or something like that.
It's like
he's like watching a video of whatever. It's like, that's part of the reason why like certain technology is super high tech. And I'll kind of also, you noticed in the movie, the guys that had like a stripe on their lip, and then he'd be talking to the Duke, and then his eyes would roll back in his head, and then he would give him an answer.
Yeah, he's like a robot, right?
No. He is what's called a mentat. And a mentat, through their lives, again, like everybody has kind of, in this world, in this universe of people or whatever, certain people have certain abilities based on years and years of just sort of them being part of the gene pool, essentially. But they're just extremely smart people that in their training have essentially learned to be human computers. They're not robotic in any way. They're not android. Again, that would go against the technology piece. That's why you don't see any robots like walking around and stuff.
Yeah.
They are able to calculate statistically likelihoods of certain things. And so that position in a Duke's like line of people is carefully chosen because he wants somebody that is really just in depth with that knowledge. And so that as a human, that skill set is going to like vary from person to person,
right.
And so that's kind of what's going on there. There's more lore behind like why their lips are purple and
that's cool.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and he has
But what's interesting about Paul is he was actually going to be training as one of those. So he's got that ability and Jessica's training. And so he's just like a triple threat. Dude.
Well, and he's very like, just as a character, like what you're talking about, with the projectors, like immediately I sort of thought of like, sort of like 60s, 70s, like psychedelica, where, these bands would have, and a lot of the bands did it when we were playing in our band, like, you'd have these sort of like, it's like this projection and like sort of that lava lamp vibe, and it's projecting on everybody. And so that's kind of what I thought, which I think was an interesting choice, because even his like setting of Paul's room feels very like 70s in a way, which I think is really cool. But
or like, what about that part when they're going in the hallway and there's just that like floating globe that's lighting the way?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Just little stuff like that.
Yeah, like really little, cool. And again, those are those like little. I mean, even down to like one of the things that I love about it is, you watch like, I mean, really less, I guess, in Star Trek, but like, you watch Star Wars or any other sci-fi, you're always going to see this like blast of propulsion coming out. But with this, it just shows like a giant, like there's this scene like in space where you just see this giant like cup, and then you see these like little ships, like little dots, like just coming out of it. And it's like everything moves just so like seamless, and it's just so far like beyond what we would think as far as like, oh, well, it has to, like, oh, we have a spaceship, it has to have, rocket fueled propulsion. It has to have this big blast coming out of the back. No, stuff is so like clean. It just sort of floats, and they never really explain it either, which is even cooler.
Yeah.
One of the scenes that is so very disturbing to me, and when I first saw it, I thought that it was CGI. When you see the Skarsgård, what's his name? Steven
the dad.
Skarsgård?
I don't know, the dad
Stellan
Skarsgård.
Skarsgård. He's like in his chamber, and he's talking to the guy that you were just talking about. His name's David Desmalchin, and the only reason I know that is because he was on an episode of Kevin Smith's Fat Man on Batman years ago. He's a really cool dude. Just started out as like a background actor, and he's made his way into like all these amazing movies. But anyway, they're in his chamber, and you see this like spider thing, like I guess feeding out of this thing on the ground. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it has this sort of like slick, like rubbery, like material. Like I said, I thought it was CGI at first. Come to find out that, and what's cool is like she says, or like the Reverend Mother is in there, and she says something about take your pet away, and he's like, he doesn't understand you. And then she like uses the voice, and she's like, get out. And it just walks away. Yeah. But I come to find out that it's actually this like French like ballet dancer inside of this like suit.
Weird.
So when you go back, like there's just something about the way it looks.
I'm gonna have to watch the making of stuff and then rewatch that. One question that people have, and I'm not sure. Again, I'm gonna have to watch the movie again. I don't know if they portrayed this or at least conveyed this enough. But the personal physician that's on staff for the Atreides, he's the one. Spoiler alert!
He betrays
Duke Atreides. And I think they kind of talk about it in this movie, but in the book, they kind of go in further depth. I mean, essentially his wife was taken from him and is being used as a sex slave.
Yeah. And tortured and
tortured and just, whatever. And this is the only way that he can get her back.
Yeah.
Is this. Now, what the heck was I just watching, dude? Where, I'm rewatching Game of Thrones before going to bed because House of the Dragon is kind of just like ignited me to rewatch it again.
Yeah, it's pretty great, by the way.
House of the Dragon, yes.
Yeah.
There's this line that I totally missed the first 5 times I've watched this show where Jon Snow is up on the wall. He finds out that his brother has gone to war, and he's like, he just feels compelled, like, I've got to go. I got to go fight alongside him. The blind guy that's, I think he's like a maester or whatever, talks to him, pulls him aside and says, have you ever wondered why, the people of the Watch or whatever never marry and never have children and stuff? And Jon Snow's like, no. And he's like, well, because like that is the biggest weakness to duty. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, because
that's really
if you have those ties, then of course you're going to do whatever it takes to, it's sort of like, would you do the honorable thing or would you save your kid? Well,
right.
Save my kid. Duh.
Yeah, there's
right?
no.
And so if you don't have those connections, you don't have to make that choice. Boom. Right?
Man, that's really
and so
that's cool.
It kind of reminds me of this like physician or whatever. And I think throughout history and fiction, but in certainly like in real life, that's where people kind of capitalize. And, it could be even in politics or whatever, they go after and try to find the weaknesses of these people so that you can either blackmail them or, it's kind of like the way that the newest Star Trek Wrath of Khan starts. There's that element of people will do whatever it takes to kind of save or protect their loved ones, even if it's a bad thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's really cool about the Game of Thrones deal. I never knew that. Yeah, I really liked how that character, the physician, I like how even though he betrayed him, it's like he still, like, you could tell that it was very much like a betrayal of his own. Like he felt like he knew what he was doing, and he was like very guilt-ridden about it. And then, of course, which I think we probably all knew, that, the Emperor's, or not the Emperor, but like the Skarsgård guy is. What's he's like the Harkonnen what?
He's
he's like the Emperor.
He's like the Duke, but
and even the way that they utilized like the weird, which I didn't even know what this is one of the things that I didn't quite understand until I watched the behind the scenes. I guess he because he's like just this huge gluttonous, huge fat dude.
That he's so lazy that he has machinery that lifts him up.
Yeah, he's constantly using like gravity modification or
he's
whatever.
The Baron.
That's right.
Yeah, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen.
Yeah. And so like you'll just see him like rise up into the air, or like oh my God, I'm sure it's in the book, but so genius how he knows that he's betraying Oscar Isaac's character, the Duke, Paul's dad, but he's still like, I'm going to replace your tooth with like a poison tooth. So if you bite down hard enough and then breathe out, you'll kill everybody in the room. And so like that was amazing. That's such a smart play off of like sort of the suicide pill or whatever, or like the cyanide pills, I guess. But then when they find him like to clean up the room, everybody else is like dead. You see him like whimpering, but he's like upside down, like up on the ceiling. So I didn't totally understand that until I watched.
So like the gas, he was trying to escape the gas. So it's like poison gas and
but I'm saying it never explains like, like how is he flying up into the air? Like how?
Because he's got that stuff on all the time.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I watched the behind the scenes.
And it's interesting too, like all the different like royal families characteristics and stuff. Like the Harkonnens are like very like hot-headed, military heavy, conquer, and in a sense, all of them kind of are, but they're all trying to vie for that emperor slot, and they know, and they're mostly threatened, everybody, by Duke Atreides because he's so like just and honorable, and they know that he's probably going to be the one that becomes the Duke, and so everybody kind of like puts a hit out on him. Even the emperor essentially is kind of like approved of this because he doesn't want him to threaten his political achievements as well. So it's just like, it's
kind of Game of Thronesy too.
Yeah, sure.
Did you know that like, and again, like I got to find this link because like these behind the scenes it's so cool. You know that there's ships, which by the way, genius. It's basically a literal sort of inspired by a dragonfly. Like these, they're like helicopters, but they're like wings instead of propellers. Yeah. They come out and then they vibrate. And
I think they call them thopters in the book.
Yeah, ornithopters,
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's like a Leonardo da Vinci's invention. Yeah. He first called his flying device the ornithopter. So I thought it was cool that Frank Herbert sort of brought that back. I also really liked, and it's just kind of random, but like Jason Momoa's character, but his name being like Duncan Idaho. Like,
I love it, dude.
Yeah, there's something that's really cool in like these like real world little like names or little.
It's almost like a character that would be in like a Western,
Oh yeah,
the
character's great, but I'm saying like even just the name like Idaho, like taking
that's what I meant. Like Duncan Idaho is kind of like a sheriff of a small town.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's great. He's such a likable dude. But yeah, no. So what I was going to say is like the ornithopters. Anytime that you see them inside the ship, like they built all of that, like actual full on ship. So when you see like it landing, like you see like the little feet, that come out of the side of it, like landing. They're actually like doing that with like a crane. We're talking like
so cool, man.
Like 20 tons worth of like steel, like these.
Which I mean, what a like that's again one of those pieces of detail. Right when you say that, I visualize it like sort of setting on the ground. You see the weight sort of like pressed down on those legs, and the legs kind of support it.
Yep.
And it's like they could have done that with CGI, but I don't think that realistically. You know what I'm saying?
No. Well, and another tidbit that's really, really cool is the shot where they're like hanging off the back of the ramp, looking down at the sandworm as it takes down like the spice extractor.
Yeah.
They actually filmed that same kind of thing. They filmed that. They're actually physically hanging out of the back of this ship that's lifted up on a crane, that, the back little ramp section. So like that's a real thing. It's not just like a CGI. Cool, and what's cool is like it's sort of an homage to the 80s movie, because I guess that same scene is like you're looking at a window to see that. Yeah. And like if you sort of overlaid them, like just it sort of has like a Dutch tilt where it's like you're your view is sort of like diagonal. Man. But it's sort of, it's sort of a play off of that. So, but dude, there's so much about this movie. I know that we could go on forever about it. I'm sure you're so tired of me talking about this, but I think getting this out, hopefully I'll feel like, okay, I can stop being obsessed with this for a while until the next one comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's amazing, dude.
It is amazing. It really, really is amazing. And for you listeners, we'd love to hear what you think about it. Do you feel like I felt before I saw it, where, it's silly and it's about spice, or are you obsessed like me after seeing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you love it? Do you hate it?
Dude.
And listen to why.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that I'm definitely going to read it now. Daniel and I both actually had the same idea of like, well, we haven't read it yet, so let's wait until we see the second half.
Definitely.
But I'm really psyched to start.
I'll let you guys borrow it anytime.
Yeah, man. Well, cool, dude. Well, I guess that about does it for this episode. If you would like to find us, you can go to our brand new website at thatwouldberadpodcast.com. If you want to stick to social media, like a lot of folks still do, you can find us over on Instagram. Hit us up in the DMs if there's, questions or, stories or whatever. We always love the banter in the comment sections. We have a great community over there. If you want to send us more of a long form type thing or an essay, shoot it to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. I used to say record a voice memo and you can leave it to us that way, through our email. But now that we have thatwouldberadpodcast.com, there's a place on the website where you can leave your message, your audio message, straight from the website, and it goes right to us. But yeah, go out and buy us a coffee. We have our brand new Patreon, The Rabbit Trail. We're so excited. The folks that have already signed up, get ready. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. We're so excited. So go become a patron. Go buy us a coffee. Go buy some merch. Speaking of merch, we're going to have new merch here soon. Make sure you tell a friend about the show and leave a 5-star review anywhere that you get your podcast. Anything else, Woody?
I think that about does it, man.
All right, pal. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. Time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead, for you became a ghost. You always said our future would be